How a poor delivery girl gave up her job to save a dying old man. What his son did will shock you. The cries for help were sharp, piercing, almost drowned by the blaring horns of Lagos Island traffic. "Somebody help me," a frail voice echoed. But nobody stopped. It was 1:13 p.m. under the punishing afternoon sun. Heat waves rose off the asphalt as office workers, kiki riders, and impatient motorists weaved through the chaos. And there, beside a cracked median divider, lay an elderly man, barely conscious, gasping through a crushed chest. His crisp white kaftan soaked red. His hand twitched toward a shattered pair of glasses beside him. Just moments earlier, a private Danfo bus had swerved wildly into a wrong lane, knocked the man down, and sped off, its yellow and black frame vanishing into traffic. The impact tossed him across the sidewalk like a rag doll. Now he lay there, eyes fluttering. People stared, murmured, walked away. "Don't touch him, oh. Ambulance never day come quickly for this Lagos. Help ko. You want problem? Nah, who help go enter police matter. A beg leave am." A few meters away, a young girl in a faded yellow jumpsuit parked her motorcycle abruptly. Her name was Zainab Abdul Rahman, barely 19, the youngest dispatch rider at her agency. Her blue rider bag bore a bright red sticker, time-sensitive medical goods. Her hands were already on her helmet when she heard the murmurs. She should just go. She'll lose her job. These delivery riders SEF. They won't mind their business. But Zainab couldn't unsee it. The man's eyes, one swollen shut, the other pleading, locked on hers. In her head, her father's voice echoed, the one she barely remembered. "Zainab, no matter how poor you get, never let the world take away your humanity." She bit her lip hard. She had exactly 11 minutes left to deliver a prepaid consignment of insulin to a patient waiting across the third mainland bridge. The delivery had already been flagged as a final strike on her record. One more failed delivery and she'd be terminated. She closed her eyes. A job or a life? She jumped off the bike, tossing her helmet aside. "Please. Someone help," she cried, but no one moved. Fighting tears, she knelt beside the man. "Sir, can you hear me?" He coughed. Blood splattered on his lip. No words. She scanned for a taxi, none. She looked at her delivery box. With trembling hands, Zainab emptied the contents of the box onto the sidewalk, medication scattered across the pavement, and somehow, with sweat dripping from her forehead, she managed to lift the man's upper body onto the now empty box, using it as a makeshift sled. One hand gripping the man, the other on her handlebar, she began to push the bike, against traffic, toward St. David's General Hospital, 7 minutes away. She didn't look back. 12 hours earlier. It was still dark outside when the first alarm buzzed in a cramped one-room face me I face you apartment in Ajigano. The small table fan whirred weakly, barely pushing air in the sweltering Lagos humidity. On a worn mattress, Zainab Abdulrahman sat upright, already tying her scarf. Her younger brother, Ismail, age 8, snored softly beside her, legs sprawled over their shared wrapper. Zainab stood, quietly tiptoeing around buckets and sandals to reach the gas cooker in the corner. She boiled water and reheated leftover EBA while packing Ismail's school bag. She was fast, efficient, someone used to early mornings and constant motion. By 5:15 a.m., she was already braiding Ismail's hair as he brushed his teeth with sleepy eyes. You don't have to do everything alone," he mumbled with foam in his mouth. She smiled. "I'll rest when you become president, a beg." They laughed quietly. Zainab had been both sister and mother since the year before when their father, a Kiki driver, collapsed and died at a bus stop. Their mother had passed years earlier from childbirth complications. No aunt, no uncle had taken them in. One even said, "I have my own wa'ala. Let God help you." So God did. Zainab sold their last usable item, a sewing machine her mom had left behind, and used it to pay for Ismail's school fees and buy a second-hand Android phone. She applied to dozens of jobs but was rejected again and again. Until one day, a woman in her compound mentioned a dispatch company looking for riders who didn't mind dangerous shifts. "Nah, mostly men they do am," she had said. Zainab replied, "I know be mostly." She borrowed money from a neighbor to learn how to ride, then got hired at RXGo Express, a delivery company that specialized in urgent medical logistics. Her shifts were grueling, the traffic relentless, and her manager, Mr. Say, was a time-obsessed tyrant. Deliveries under 25 minutes. No excuses. "You're lucky I even hired you," he always barked. Today's delivery was especially crucial, a prepaid box of refrigerated insulin meant for a 68-year-old diabetic. The instructions were clear: do not fail. Mr. Say had pulled her aside that morning. "You already have 2 strikes. If you mess this one up, don't bother showing up tomorrow." Zainab nodded, jaw clenched. By 11:58 a.m., she had picked up the parcel from the RXGo Central Branch in Yaba. ETA to the client's address was 23 minutes via 3rd Mainland Bridge. Traffic was moderate, her fuel tank half full. She weaved skillfully between buses and potholes. She was focused. But fate doesn't ask for permission. It was 1:13 p.m. when she saw him, an elderly man lying on the expressway, barely moving, his white kaftan soaked in blood, his arm twitching near the curb. The world paused. Zainab had 9 minutes left to complete the delivery. That's when the decision came crashing in. Deliver life-saving insulin or try to save a stranger's life? And she chose. The hospital corridor buzzed with fluorescent lights and urgency. As Zainab pushed her bike across the front driveway of St. David's General Hospital, sweat poured from her body. Her back ached, arms trembling from the strain of supporting the man's weight the entire way. She barely managed to drag the old man off the delivery box before collapsing beside him. "Somebody help," she screamed, her voice hoarse. A nurse standing near the glass doors rushed forward, gasping as she saw the blood. "What happened?" "Hit and run," Zainab panted. He's not talking." The emergency response team burst through the doors with a gurney. The man was lifted swiftly, tubes attached, oxygen mask strapped to his face. One of the paramedics called out vitals in quick Yoruba. Pulse weak. Blood pressure falling. Internal bleeding suspected. "Are you his daughter?" another nurse asked. "No," Zainab replied. "I just found him." "His name?" "I don't know." He couldn't speak. "Phone." Zainab reached into the man's kaftan pocket. Blood smeared her fingers. She found a cracked Samsung phone inside. She wiped it with her scarf and held the screen to the light. Only one number was saved under "My son." She tapped it. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Then, a deep voice answered. "Yes, Daddy." Zainab's voice shook. "Please, this isn't your father. I found him injured. He was in an accident. We're at St. David's General Hospital, Victoria Island." The line went silent. Then a loud yell. "What?" "I'm on my way. Don't leave him." The call ended. Zainab collapsed onto a bench just outside the ER doors. Her hands were shaking, her heart pounding. She looked down at her now empty delivery bag. Gone. She had left the insulin box behind at the scene. In Lagos? That meant it was as good as stolen. Her phone vibrated violently. "Manager Say." She answered. "Zainab. Where the hell are you?" The client just called screaming. "That insulin is time critical. I swear, if you've messed this up." "I'm sorry, sir. I had to help." "You're fired." Click. The words echoed louder than the hospital monitors beeping in the background. Fired. No salary. No fuel allowance. No job. She sat on the cold bench, staring at her phone screen. Her hands were covered in dry blood and sweat. Her clothes clung to her body. Her whole world felt like it had just imploded. She'd chosen to save a life, and lost everything else. She didn't even know if the old man would make it. Behind her, emergency doors swung open. A nurse walked briskly toward her. "He's still alive," she said softly. But just barely. If he had arrived 10 minutes later, he wouldn't have made it. Zainab exhaled, her breath ragged. Just then, the loud screech of tires echoed outside. A jet-black Lexus SUV pulled up to the hospital entrance. From it stepped a tall man in a pristine blue kaftan and gold-rimmed glasses. He looked around wildly. "Where is he? Where's my father?" Zainab stood up. "You're his son." He turned sharply. You're the one who called." She nodded slowly. He blinked, then stared at her bloodied clothes and torn rider uniform. "You brought him here, on that bike?" Zainab nodded again. The man's mouth opened in disbelief. Then he ran toward the ER doors without another word. 15 minutes passed. Zainab sat numbly in the waiting area of St. David's General, her eyes fixed on the flickering television in the corner, but her mind too clouded to follow the news anchor's words. Her hands were still stained, her phone battery at 3%, and her thoughts bouncing between panic and regret. Did I do the right thing? What if he dies anyway? What will I tell Ismail? A soft, polished voice interrupted her thoughts. "You're Zainab, right?" She looked up. It was the man in the blue kaftan. But now, his tone had shifted. His gaze wasn't frantic, it was focused. Gentle, even. "Yes," she said hesitantly. He stepped closer. "I'm Farouk Adebayo. That man you brought in, he's my father." Zainab nodded, standing up slowly. "He's stable now," Farouk added. "Doctor said you got him here just in time." A few minutes later and, he stopped himself. "Well, you didn't wait. You didn't walk away." Zainab gave a weak smile. "I couldn't." Farouk studied her face. Then he looked down at the scrapes on her hands. "What happened to the bike? And your delivery?" She looked away, ashamed. "Gone, sir. I had to abandon the delivery. I was fired." Silence. "You work with RXGo?" She nodded. "Until about 20 minutes ago." Farouk exhaled slowly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek phone, dialing a number. She tried not to eavesdrop but couldn't help catching the tone. "Hi, it's Farouk. Tell Say that Zainab Abdulrahman is no longer to be terminated. In fact, I want her reassigned, personally. Top priority. And find out where that insulin ended up. Send a replacement now. And make it complimentary." "Yes, I said complimentary." He hung up and turned back to her. "You work at one of my satellite partner hubs. I built RXGo." Zainab's mouth dropped. "You, what?" "I own the parent company," he said. "I mostly deal with higher-level supply chain operations. But, let's just say I have eyes everywhere." Zainab was stunned. This was the founder. The man her manager had once called the untouchable Oga at the top. "You shouldn't have lost your job for doing the right thing," he added. "Not on my watch." She blinked quickly, struggling to keep tears from spilling. "You didn't have to do that." Farouk cut her off gently. "No, Zainab. You did something no one else did. You stopped. You risked your livelihood to save my father. You didn't have to do that." They both stood silently for a moment, the weight of everything hanging between them. Farouk nodded toward the hallway. I'd like you to meet him. He keeps asking for the girl who carried him like he was a sack of yam. Zainab chuckled nervously. I wasn't sure he'd even remember. Oh, he remembers everything. Farouk smiled for the first time, sincerely. He led her gently toward the room. But Zainab didn't know, that meeting would change her entire life. The hospital room was still, except for the quiet beeping of machines and the soft hiss of oxygen flowing through clear plastic tubes. Zainab hesitated at the door. Inside, the old man lay propped up slightly on the hospital bed, a bandage wrapped around his head, his skin pale but his eyes alert. He turned as they entered. Farouk spoke first. Baba, this is Zainab. The man blinked, his eyes softening as they landed on her. He reached out a trembling hand. Zainab stepped closer. Slowly, respectfully, she took it. You carried me, the old man whispered, his voice raspy but steady. Yes, sir, Zainab said softly. You were hurt. I had to do something. The old man nodded, then closed his eyes briefly. When I was on the road, he said, I saw faces, people passing, but no one stopped. Then I saw you. In that yellow jumpsuit. You looked scared, but you didn't run. Zainab swallowed hard. I don't know how I'm still alive, he said. But I know why I didn't die. Because you didn't leave me there. Farouk watched the exchange quietly. Then he stepped aside to let them speak in peace. What's your name again? The old man asked. Zainab. Zainab Abdulrahman. He smiled faintly. Zainab, your name means, fragrant flower. Fitting. She blushed. My mother named me before she died. The old man's face changed, more somber now. You lost your mother? She nodded. And my father last year. He was silent a long moment. So you've been surviving on your own? I have a little brother, she said. Ismail. I take care of him. I was working delivery just to keep things going. The old man nodded thoughtfully. You know, when I was your age, he said, I lost everything too. But nobody came to save me. I had to crawl out of the pit alone. Zainab looked up. You remind me of myself. Only, braver. They sat in silence for a few moments more. The old man squeezed her hand gently before closing his eyes again, tired. Farouk stepped back into the room, lowering his voice. He needs rest. But he insisted he meet you. Zainab nodded. Thank you for letting me see him. They stepped out of the room together. Back in the corridor, she turned to him. I should go. I need to figure out what comes next. Farouk stared at her. Where do you live? Ajagunal. And your brother? He's probably home from school by now. I'll take you home. Zainab hesitated. No need, I'll manage. Farouk gave her a look, not stern, but resolute. You saved my father's life. The least I can do, is make sure you get home safely. She nodded, unsure of what was unfolding, but something had shifted. This man wasn't just thankful. He was watching her, like she mattered. The sun had just begun to dip behind the skyline as Farouk's sleek black Lexus curved into the narrow, uneven street leading into Zainab's neighborhood in Ajagunal. The car moved cautiously, dodging potholes and plastic buckets used by neighbors to reserve space. Kids playing football in the street paused mid-game. Mama. See car way enter our street oh. Na film dem day shoot. No oh. See that fine girl way day come down. Zainab stepped out slowly, her yellow jumpsuit now half unzipped, her arms wrapped around herself. She felt the eyes. The curiosity. The judgment. Farouk emerged next, polished, tall, his designer capped in a sharp contrast to the rusted zinc roofs and tangled clotheslines around him. Zainab gestured nervously toward the cement block building. "This is us," she said quietly. "We live in room 6, back corridor." Farouk didn't flinch. He nodded and followed her through the compound. Inside the room, Ismail sat cross-legged on the floor, eating soaked gari with groundnuts and watching cartoons on mute. When Zainab entered, his face lit up. "Sister. You're back." He froze when he saw the man behind her. "Ismail, this is Mr. Farouk," Zainab said quickly. "He helped me today." Farouk squatted down, smiling. "You must be the famous Ismail." The boy blinked, confused but curious. "Are you a governor?" Farouk chuckled. "Not yet." Zainab motioned awkwardly. "Please sit, sorry, we only have one stool." Farouk shook his head. "I'm fine." He scanned the room, peeling paint, one mattress, a pot on a broken gas burner, and Zainab's delivery bag folded neatly in a corner. "You take care of everything?" he asked softly. Zainab nodded. Farouk turned toward Ismail. "Your sister is a hero. Did you know that?" Ismail beamed. "She's always a hero. Even when she has no money." Zainab blushed, stepping aside to boil water on the stove. "I was just about to make tea." "You don't need to do that," Farouk said gently. But she insisted. It was her way of showing gratitude. A few minutes passed with quiet conversation. Farouk observed them. The way Zainab gently corrected Ismail's grammar, the way she laughed when he made silly faces. It was clear, she didn't just survive here, she gave life to this place. When he finally stood to leave, he turned to her. "You're not coming back to that branch," he said. She froze. "I've already contacted HR. We're moving your profile to our head office. But not as a dispatch rider." Zainab's brows furrowed. "Then what would I be?" "You'll see," he said with a small smile. "But I also want to help, with Ismail, your rent, school fees. All of it." Zainab opened her mouth, then closed it again. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I know," Farouk replied. "But I want to." He paused by the door. "I'll be back tomorrow. I want to show you something." And with that, he left, leaving behind a room filled with questions and a strange flutter in Zainab's chest. The next morning, Zainab stood outside her compound in a modest blouse and a pair of freshly washed jeans, nervously clutching her handbag. Her delivery uniform had been folded and tucked away, for good, she hoped. Ismail stood beside her, gripping her hand tightly, his school bag slung over one shoulder. At 8:17 a.m. sharp, the black Lexus pulled up again. This time, the neighborhood didn't gawk quite as hard, though a few curious faces still peeked from windows. "Good morning," Farouk said, stepping out of the vehicle in a smart blazer and native trousers. "Ready?" "Ready," Zainab replied, though her voice trembled slightly. She helped Ismail into the back seat before sliding into the front passenger side. As they pulled off, she asked, "Where are we going?" "You'll see," Farouk replied with a smile. They drove through the bustling arteries of Lagos, from the dust of Ajagunle into the wealth of Ikoyi, through palm-lined roads and luxury apartments. Zainab stared out the window. "It's like another country." Farouk laughed. "That's Lagos for you. A whole country within a city." After about 30 minutes, they arrived at a large white duplex with a high-security gate and a driveway big enough for 6 cars. A uniformed security guard opened the gate immediately. "Welcome to my home," Farouk said as the gate slid shut behind them. Zainab's heart skipped. "Wait, this is your house?" Farouk nodded. "Yes. You'll be staying here, for now." She turned sharply. "I can't. Farouk, this is too much." He stopped the car gently in the driveway and turned to her. Just until we sort things out, your job, Ismail's school, your rent back in Ajigunal. Baba wants to see you again too. The front door opened, and a cheerful housekeeper waved at them. Inside, the house smelled like vanilla and polished wood. There were glass railings, abstract paintings, and potted plants that looked like they cost more than their entire room in Ajigunal. Ismail ran up the marble stairs, his voice echoing, "Sister. The toilet has buttons." Zainab smiled despite herself. A few minutes later, they entered a sunlit room at the back of the house where the old man, Al-Haji Adebayo, sat on a recliner in a flowing navy blue robe, a blanket over his legs. "You came," he said with a grin, his voice stronger today. Zainab bowed her head slightly. "Good morning, sir." "You brought sunshine with you again," he said, gesturing toward the chair beside him. "Sit. Tell me about yourself." So she did. She told him about her father's death, the rejection from relatives, the job she couldn't get, and how the dispatch company became her lifeline. Farouk stood by the door, arms crossed, silently watching. As Zainab spoke, Al-Haji nodded slowly, then turned to his son. "This girl didn't just save me, Farouk. She saved something inside me I thought was gone." Farouk's eyes met Zainab's. Something passed between them, unspoken, but powerful. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Later that evening, the house was quiet except for the clink of cutlery and the faint hum of the kitchen exhaust fan. Zainab sat at the long glass dining table, watching Ismail devour spaghetti bolognese as if he were in a food contest. She, on the other hand, barely touched her meal. Everything still felt surreal, from the crisp white linen napkins to the wall-mounted wine rack beside the fridge. Farouk walked in, fresh from a business call, his sleeves rolled up. "Hope you're both settling in," he said, taking a seat across from her. "Yes, sir." "Thank you," Zainab said politely, her tone still cautious. "No, sir," he corrected with a smile. "Just Farouk." She nodded, unsure how to be informal with a man who lived like this. "You'll start orientation at the head office next week," he said. "You'll work under the internal logistics team, that's who ensures our medical deliveries are routed efficiently." Zainab's eyes widened. "But I don't have a certificate. I only finished secondary school." Farouk leaned forward. "I'm not offering this to you because of a degree. I'm offering it because of your heart. That, I can't teach. Everything else, we can train." Zainab blinked back sudden tears. "You'll also be back in school," he added. "If you're willing." Her fork dropped onto her plate. "I'll cover everything. Evening classes, or even online if you prefer. But you're too smart to not keep learning." She was speechless. Farouk smiled gently. "And Ismail starts at New Crest Academy next term. He'll be in good hands." Ismail looked up, noodles dangling from his mouth. "Is it far?" "It's where diplomats send their kids," Farouk said with a grin. "What?" Ismail nearly choked in excitement. After dinner, a housekeeper showed them their rooms. Zainab stood at the doorway of hers, stunned. The bed was wider than the entire space she used to sleep in. There were clean sheets, soft pillows, even a reading table. On the corner of the bed sat a box wrapped in gold paper, a welcome gift from Al-Haji. Inside, a journal, a set of pens, and a handwritten note that read, "For the girl who stopped to save a stranger. May your story continue with dignity and strength." That night, Zainab couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the moon through the window. From down the hallway, she could hear Ismail snoring softly. She stepped into the back garden, barefoot, needing air. The night breeze rustled the leaves. A line of roses, soft pinks and deep reds, stood along the back fence, illuminated by warm garden lights. It smelled of rain and jasmine. Then she noticed someone sitting in the garden chair. Farouk. He looked up. Couldn't sleep. She shook her head. Too much to process. I understand, he said. Sometimes the best things in life come disguised as interruptions. They sat quietly for a while, side by side, nothing but the rustling leaves between them. I don't know what you're doing, or why, Zainab said softly. But, thank you. Farouk looked at her with a steady gaze. I'm not doing charity, Zainab. I'm honoring what my father calls, the debt of a life. 3 weeks later, Zainab stood outside our Exco HQ, dressed in her new office uniform, navy blue shirt, black pants, ID card swinging from her neck. A far cry from her dusty delivery jumpsuit. Inside, she had quickly become a quiet favorite among the logistics team. She learned fast. Observed faster. Respected everyone. But not everyone liked that. Especially not Mr. Saei. From his corner office in the same building, he watched her daily with thinly veiled disdain. The girl he fired now sat in a higher-ranking department, reporting directly to the company's founder. The gossip started small. Who is she to Farouk? I heard she saved his dad's life. A beg, who dash monkey banana? No be charm she you so. I heard she planned the accident herself. Zainab began noticing the side eyes. The sudden pauses in conversation when she walked into a room. The uneasy tension, like a rope being pulled quietly behind her back. Still, she kept her head down. At night, she studied online. Farouk had enrolled her in a certified diploma in data operations and analytics. It was tough, but she pushed through. Every weekend, she visited her old neighborhood to drop food packages for the neighbors who once offered her nothing. Not out of revenge, but gratitude. Farouk watched her change, but more than that, he watched how she didn't change. She still woke early. Still cooked for Ismail. Still prayed quietly by the garden wall. Still smiled at every staff member like they were equals. One evening, Farouk's father, Al-Haji Adebayo, called him into the reading room. This girl, he said, sipping warm kunu. She reminds me of your mother. Farouk looked up. How? She was fierce but kind. Always making people uncomfortable by being too generous. That's what Zainab does. She rattles the world by being good. Farouk smiled. But behind the smile was a complication he hadn't spoken aloud yet. He was beginning to feel more than gratitude. He was beginning to feel something deeper. That same week, a sealed envelope landed on the receptionist's desk. No name. No return address. Inside it was a single typed letter. Your golden girl is not who she says she is. Ask her what she was doing near that road. Dig deeper. People like her don't stumble into your life, they calculate it. It was unsigned. But Farouk didn't need a signature. The tone, the veiled spite, it reeked of Saei. He read the letter quietly in his office, fingers tapping his desk. He didn't believe it, not fully. But he'd been betrayed before. By trusted partners. Friends. Even exes. So, as painful as it was, he made a call. Get me footage of the road where my father was hit. That street near Civic Towers. I want to confirm everything. And then, he did something he didn't want to do. He stopped looking at Zainab with just admiration. And started looking at her, with doubt. It was a Saturday evening, and rain tapped gently against the windows of Farouk's mansion. The sky had turned a soft steel gray, the garden outside soaked but still glowing faintly from the solar pathway lights. Inside, the atmosphere was quiet. Zainab sat curled on the living room couch, a legal pad in hand, scribbling down notes from her online data class. Ismail played chess with Al-Haji Adebayo in the corner, giggling every time he made a move that surprised the old man. Farouk watched them from the kitchen doorway, sipping tea. This was what his house had become now, a home. And yet, that letter still sat in his drawer. Just as he was about to walk over to join them, the housekeeper approached quietly. "Sir, there's someone at the gate. She says she knows Miss Zainab." Zainab looked up. "Who?" She gave no name. Just said it's urgent. Zainab's heart skipped. She hadn't told anyone about her new address. She stood, confused but curious. "I'll go." Farouk watched her go, his fingers tightening slightly around the teacup. Zainab walked out to the gate, her slippers splashing slightly in a puddle on the concrete path. The security guard nodded and opened the small entrance. There, under the flickering street lamp, stood a woman in a faded wrapper and oversized hoodie. Her face was thin, eyes sharp, the lines around her mouth suggesting years of quiet pain. Zainab hesitated. "Can I help you?" The woman stepped forward. Her voice was a whisper. "You're Zainab Abdulrahman?" "Yes. I knew your parents." Zainab froze. The woman looked around quickly. "Please. I can't come inside. But I need to tell you something important." Zainab nodded, heart thudding. "Go on." "I lived 2 compounds away from you, in Al-Haji Asho estate. My name is Mama Ife. I was there the night your father died." Zainab's eyes widened. "You were there? You saw what happened?" The woman hesitated, voice cracking. "Zainab, it wasn't a random heart attack. Your father didn't collapse by chance." Zainab's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" The woman looked over her shoulder, then leaned in. "He was poisoned." "What?" "Your father refused to sign over some diagnostic land space to a powerful developer. The man had connections. He offered bribes, your father said no. A week later, he died." Zainab's knees went weak. Mama Ife continued, "I didn't speak before. I was scared. But when I saw your face on TV last week, with that man, Farouk, I knew I had to come forward. You deserve the truth." Zainab swallowed hard. "Who was the developer?" "I don't know his real name. But I wrote down the license plate of the car that came that night. I've kept it for years." She handed Zainab a crumpled slip of paper, a plate number scribbled in pen. "Do whatever you want with it. But be careful. That man is powerful. People who talk, disappear." And with that, she turned and disappeared into the night. Zainab stood under the streetlight, heart pounding, paper clutched tightly in her palm. This wasn't over. Not even close. Zainab didn't sleep that night. She sat at the desk in her room, staring at the crumpled slip of paper. The plate number, EKY 943HV, was like a ghost pulled from the past. Her heart raced with questions she had long buried, questions she never thought would be answered. Had her father really been murdered? By morning, the paper was still on her desk. So was a decision. She marched down to Farouk's home office and knocked. "Come in." He looked up, mildly surprised. She hadn't come to his office unannounced before. "I need your help," she said, stepping in and closing the door behind her. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. Farouk gestured to the chair across from him. "Talk to me." Zainab dropped the paper in front of him. "That's a plate number. It may belong to the person responsible for my father's death." Farouk's brows furrowed. She explained everything. The woman at the gate. The warning. The land dispute. The refusal to sell. The mysterious heart attack. Farouk listened in silence, his expression shifting from concern to something darker, resolve. "I should have told you earlier," Zainab said. "But I overheard your call a few weeks ago, you were investigating me." Farouk looked down, guilt flickering in his eyes. I didn't know what to believe. People were whispering. I wanted to protect everyone. Including you. Zainab nodded. I get it. But now, we need to investigate the right person. Farouk picked up the slip. Give me 48 hours. He was a man of his word. By the next evening, his private investigator returned with a full dossier. The license plate was registered to a shell company owned by Dr. Temitope Akintund, a powerful real estate tycoon with government connections. He had once been a business associate of Zainab's father. He was known for aggressive takeovers, Farouk said, laying the files across the table. Your father was on the board of a community hospital project. Temitope wanted the land converted into luxury flats. Your father refused. A month later, the project lost funding, and then, he died. Zainab felt rage tighten in her chest. Does this mean we can prosecute? Farouk nodded grimly. With this evidence, yes. But it won't be easy. He'll have protection. Lawyers. Power. Zainab looked him dead in the eye. Then we go through the system. No shortcuts. If I've learned anything from my mother, it's that justice means more when you earn it. Farouk smiled faintly. You're stronger than most people I know. He picked up his phone. Let's get my legal team started. As he made the calls, Zainab stepped out into the garden. Her body was shaking, but her spirit felt lighter. For the first time, she wasn't just reacting to life. She was confronting it. And she wasn't alone anymore. It took 6 weeks of preparation. Documents. Witness statements. Archived contracts. Threatening voice notes from anonymous sources. Farouk's legal team worked overtime, and Zainab worked alongside them, learning, listening, never missing a meeting. When the petition was filed, it caused a stir in the press. Logistics heiress accuses developer of murder cover-up. New evidence in 5-year-old death reopens land corruption case. Dr. Temitope Akintund, known for building skyscrapers and buying off silence, didn't react publicly. But Zainab knew. She could feel it, he was watching. The case was admitted by the Federal High Court, and the first hearing was scheduled. Farouk stood by Zainab every step of the way. And so did Alhaji Adebayo, now walking stronger with each passing week. On the morning of the first court appearance, Zainab stood before her mirror, dressed in a clean, dark suit Farouk had gifted her. She wasn't the same girl who once ducked police sirens and potholes on a dispatch bike. She was ready. The courtroom was filled. Press lined the gallery. Whispers rose when Zainab entered, her chin high. The opposing counsel, all gray suits and cold glares, eyed her like an annoyance. A mere girl stirring old dust. Then Temitope entered. Calm. Arrogant. Dressed in a navy blue agbada with gold embroidery. He didn't glance at her once. The trial began. Farouk's lead attorney laid out the case. The motive, land corruption. The method, poison disguised as illness. The cover-up, medical records doctored, witnesses scared into silence. The courtroom tensed as exhibit after exhibit was presented. Zainab's handwritten statement. The eyewitness testimony from Mama Ife. Plate registration. Financial records connecting Temitope's shell company to bribe attempts made to Zainab's father. Temitope's defense was as predictable as it was weak, no direct evidence. Conspiracy. Fabricated allegations. Zainab took the stand on the third day. She spoke with steady emotion, of her father's integrity, of the night he collapsed, of the silence that followed. Her voice didn't crack, not once, until she said, I watched the world forget him. But I didn't. I couldn't. And now the truth has a name. And that truth is standing in this courtroom. Somewhere in the back row, Alhaji Adebayo wiped his eyes. By the end of the proceedings, the judge requested 2 additional weeks to deliberate. The verdict was scheduled for August 12. That night, Zainab sat in the garden again, the same place she had once doubted everything. But now, she was certain of one thing. She had fought for her father. And she had won back her voice. Farouk joined her with 2 glasses of orange juice. "Whatever happens," he said, "I've never seen someone carry truth with as much dignity as you." Zainab looked at him, something unspoken passing between them again. They were no longer strangers. They were bonded by justice. August 12. The day felt heavy with expectation. Clouds hung low over Lagos, casting a grayish hue across the federal high court complex. The air outside was thick, both with humidity and anxiety. Zainab arrived early, flanked by Farouk and his legal team. She wore a simple white blouse tucked into a black skirt, her natural hair wrapped in a cream-colored scarf. Her eyes were calm, but inside, her heart slammed like a generator. The courtroom was packed. Media. Activists. Lawyers. Even distant relatives she hadn't seen since the funeral. And in the far corner, slouched in silence, sat Dr. Temitope Kintund, wearing dark sunglasses and a subtle frown. Still smug. Still silent. The judge entered. All rose. Zainab's fingers intertwined so tightly in her lap she didn't realize her nails were digging into her skin. After reviewing all evidence submitted, the judge began, his voice measured, and weighing both prosecution and defense, "The court has reached a final verdict in the matter of the suspicious death of Mr. Abdulrahman Yakubu, and the criminal involvement of the accused, Dr. Temitope Kintund." The courtroom stilled. No coughs. No whispers. "The court finds the defendant guilty." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Zainab blinked. She heard the words but couldn't believe them at first. The judge continued, "This court hereby sentences Dr. Temitope Kintund to life imprisonment, with no possibility of parole, for conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice. Let this stand as a precedent that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law." Suddenly, Zainab's vision blurred. The tears she had denied for 5 years came in one uncontrollable wave. Temitope stood up, shouting. "You can't do this. I made this city. You're all insects." Bailiffs surrounded him. He was dragged out, kicking, swearing, his agbada dragging behind like a defeated flag. Outside the courtroom, reporters surged toward Zainab.